and for the Norwegian delegation at the high-level segments of the Conference of the Parties to the UNSCCC. Mr. Sondheim.
Thank you so much. Let me first of all express how unhappy I am with not being able to stay here for the last 2 days. I just came in from Sudan, so I should have very much wanted to be here. Just to mention to you, how everything is connected. That in Sudan, basically, I heard people raise 2 questions. President Mkapa will know this very well. Number 1 is, will the peace last? The second was, when will the rain come? These were the 2 issues. And the last one was put by the farmers, basically. The first one by the politicians, basically. But of course, no one can establish the exact connection between climate change and the lack of rain in a nation like Sudan. But the United Nations Environment Programme has done a lot in that regard, and I think there is a very clear relationship. Let me also welcome you, President Mkapa, to Norway, Prime Minister Shipley. So we are very, very happy that so experienced politicians are here. Last week I took part in the African Union Environmental Minister meeting in Nairobi. I was very happy that Norway was invited to that one. But I think the main development of that conference, which most certainly will be codified by the head of state meeting in Libya in July, is Africa coming together to try to find a common platform for climate change talks. Up to now, to be very frank, there has been no African voice in the climate negotiation. Well, there has been one, a white South African, with you can hardly get a more Afrikaner name, Martinus van der Schwalkwijk, who would believe in the 1980s that a person with that name would speak on behalf of Africa. That would have we would have got very good odds at the time of the apartheid regime, but he has been excellent. But there has been very weak African participation. Now I think Africa will come together, get a common platform, and that will be very, very important in climate talks, which at the end of the day, of course, will be mainly defined by the European Union, United States of America, and China. There has been a lot of pessimism expressed here. Let me be on the optimistic note. I think there is a lot of positives, and of course the election of Barack Obama has completely changed the entire environment. The speech he made yesterday in Cairo, of course, reaching out to the Muslim world, it also influences the climate talks, because everything is related to everything, as our former Prime Minister Gro Harlem Brundtland once said. Everything is related to everything, and unless there is broad confidence in the world, nothing will happen in climate change talks either. For that reason, it was also so important that Secretary Clinton chose to go to China first, and chose, when she went there, to focus on the 2 real issues of our time, financial crisis and climate crisis, and the relationship between the 2 of them, and not let herself deviate into secondary or third-range issues. That's very important. So I think still the confidence of the world is much, much better than it was. Let me then try to comment upon a few of the issues which have been brought up by the panel here. I fully share the view that sectorial approaches is a road which will have to be explored. It's a difficult one, very clearly so, but it's a possibility, and we should explore that avenue. Of course, climate change is related to human rights, and very clearly it's a rights-based issue, and there can be no other general answer that every individual of the world has the same right to pollute. What ideology could give any other answer? Being it Christianity, Islam, Hinduism, Buddhism, Sikhism, Judaism, whatever, socialism, conservatism, whatever you apply as an ideological basis, I think you have to come to the conclusion that the right to pollute is the same for our American friends, for us, as for the Indians or the Africans. Because as with other human rights, it's a long way to achieve such an aim, but it must be the philosophical basis for the debate from my point of view. Then on technology. From my perspective, if you ask what is the answer to climate change, the number 1 is technological revolution. There is no other way. There is no way we can design a global economy where every American or every European come down to the present African or Indian emission level or living standard. I mean, there is no political program nor any economic theory which could bring us that way. So we must keep basically the living standard up while polluting much less. Then climate revolution or technological revolution is the answer. How we do achieve that? One answer is much strict. I mean, obviously the carbon market or carbon tax is the basis, that's the platform for everything. It must be implemented broadly. Then we must have, I think, much more strict regulation of markets to bring in the technology which is already in existence. A lot is not moon landing or rocket science. A lot is, I mean, it's on the table now. Still, we are too conservative to use it. And by regulating the markets, we will get that much more rapidly. And what was said here, I think the building sector or housing sector is the key example of that, where so much is already there, while we still don't use it. Then we need public-private partnerships, very clearly, in particular in the areas where no one can really expect business to take all the risk. Because the possible profit is too far into the future, the risk of failure is too big, then there must be public-private partnerships. And a key Norwegian example is, of course, carbon sequestration or carbon capture and storage. There is simply no business in the world who is at this point ready to do that or to take all the cost, well, the possible profit also, without government support. So there must be public-private partnerships in that area. But you can think of many, many other areas where it's not the implementation of the present technology, but where it is the quantum leap technologies. Their public-private partnerships will be essential. I am a little reluctant to believe that patent rights or intellectual property rights are so big a hindrance for technology transfer as you sometimes hear. I think that can basically be resolved. But I think also here we have to look to private-public systems, because the extended cost with technology transfer may in some cases be covered by governments or by public financial systems. It will not be easy to design because most of the technology will be in the private sector, but we may have a system where if an European or American company invests in China and do a lot of technology transfer through that process, or in Tanzania, wherever it is, the extended cost, the extra cost, is covered by some public scheme. At least I think that's a way of thinking. Let me then at the end up with financing, which Leif Erik has covered much better than I can. I mean, you're also the architect behind the so-called Norwegian proposal, which is presented in all climate talks. You presented it yourself. That is, you make a reservation of, say, 2% of the carbon permits in the system. You auction them globally, and it will generate a lot of money for climate adaptation. There are 3 areas which will have to be financed in Copenhagen. Climate adaptation, in particular in Africa and the other least developed nations. Climate technology transfer, main proponent of that will be like China and India, and then the conservation of and sustainable use of rainforest, peatlands, and other areas which is sequestrating a lot of carbon at the moment. All this is needed, big money is needed, and we have to look to different schemes to get it, and also look into the governance system, which have to be transparent and strict. Well, that was commenting some of the issues here. There may be others, but I mean, when looking through this document, it's very, very difficult for me to find anything I disagree with.
Thank you. Well, I think we'd probably all like to say that we're very heartened to hear that you don't find something in the document that you disagree with, because there's been a lot of work and a lot of heavy brain power and a lot of ideas that have come out of these last few days, and we're counting on you to take these recommendations back